Hey, welcome back to Diary of a New Producer. This is the weekly series where I give you a look behind the scenes into the life of a new producer. He's in his first year. We're calling him Ian Cognito. My name is Micah Salas. I'm the host. I'm also his mentor. And this week, we're going to get into a couple different things that I think you'll find extremely helpful. First is kind of when to walk away or when to keep chasing and pursuing a prospect. The second thing we're going to get into is just following up and understanding the importance of this and that you are not the center of your client's universe. And the last thing that Ian and I are going to cover and I'm going to share with you is a cold calling script and enlightenment moment that Ian had. So stay tuned. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. If you've watched this before, welcome back. Glad to have you. Let's get into this. All right. So I have missed recording the last 3 or 4 weeks. I have been busy personally, have a new baby boy. Ian and I have been talking. We just haven't done our formal meetings. So that's just a little housekeeping for anybody who's been watching and tuning in weekly. But if you've missed past episodes, I think we've done 27 or 28 to this point. Go check them out. Every single week's different. Even if it's recorded back in August of 2023, there's still going to be valuable information in there for you. All right. So some of the things that Ian and I have been talking about the last couple of weeks and themes. The first thing is just walking away, right? And having the confidence to do that and the discipline to do that, even when you're building a book, even when your sales results suck. Anyone can say that, go on LinkedIn and say, yeah, walk away. That's a terrible prospect. They don't fit. That's real easy for us to say. But it's a lot more difficult to actually do that in the real world. I know because I've built a book, I'm rebuilding my book as well. I've chased some prospects I shouldn't have chased. I, kept going down the rabbit trail and got sucked in and wasted a bunch of my time and got emotionally invested in deals that I should have definitely walked away from, as has Ian. We were actually working on a really good prospect together, about 25,000 in revenue. And he wasn't dealing with a decision maker necessarily. He did at first. He passed him down. He worked his way in there. The lady was super unhappy with her incumbent and still is, but ultimately was hell bent on quoting with multiple agents, but not even getting Ian the information he needed. And so it was just frustrating him. And eventually he just made the decision to walk away. And he told me, he's like, you know what, man, it actually feels good. She wasn't buying into the way of doing things. I don't think it'd be a good client anyways, and someone I'd want to work with. So I was proud of him for doing that. It's not easy when your revenue is not where you want it to be to walk away from a $25,000 revenue account. So remember, just to stay disciplined in your prospecting efforts and don't try to sell from a place of desperation. It just won't work. All right. So the second theme that we've kind of been talking about, Ian and I, the last couple of weeks that I wanted to share with y'all is follow up, right? Another, I guess, tale of sorrow for Ian here. He had a prospect that he was working. The guy had shown interest. They had a meeting. He was supposed to send him information, and he just went silent. Well, Ian kind of made rightfully so, after the silence, said, you know what, I'm going to follow up with the guy after his renewal, see how it went. Maybe I can re-spark a conversation. He calls the guy back. The guy says, yeah, actually, we just changed carriers and agents and everything. We had no choice. And Ian was pissed, right? Because he was like, man, we had met. Like, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you reach out to me? Now, I don't think he said that to the guy that direct, but that's how he felt. And I said, man, this is a good learning lesson. You got to understand that we are not at the center of our prospects universe, especially if insurance is not like right there, right? Perfect example, if they renew August 1st and you're calling them, May 1st, they're going to think that's way too early. Call me back July 1st, we'll say. So that's just important for me to point out to you because I think a lot of us, whether it's sales or just personally, our ego is bigger than we realize, right? We think everyone's world revolves around us when it really doesn't. And Ian got a little taste of that, right? And I said, this is why it's so critical to, when you follow up with people, to see things through. I'm not saying to waste your time or go down, again, rabbit trails that will never materialize. But if you think, if there's an open loop and it's not closed and you just feel like, man, what happened here? See it through, right? Follow up more than you think. Calling someone 3 times a week isn't obsessing, right? It's not crazy. You don't have to leave messages every time, but being persistent and pleasantly persistent is a skill. So learn that and be comfortable with it. There's a great quote I really like. I can't remember if it's Eleanor Roosevelt or who said it, but And I'm terrible with remembering quotes. This one is one I remember. I think I might butcher it, but it goes like this. It says, people would worry a lot less what others thought about them if they realized how seldom they do. I have to tell this to myself, right? Because sometimes in sales, what if I sound stupid, or what if I follow up too much? That's just you worrying about what others think about you, right? That's where your ego needs to die, and you just say, hey, I got a job to do. I think I can help this person. I'm going to follow through on it. So, all right, the last thing I want to talk about this week, and this is really, really good. So hopefully this will open some of your eyes, and it's cold calling, right? The hot button we all like to talk about. What's the perfect script? If you don't know my journey, I tried a lot of complicated scripts. I had a lot of call reluctance, and I basically one day, probably 7, 8 years ago, just made the decision. I'm going to go super basic. I'm going to call and be like, hey, Bob, it's Micah with Christensen Group. We've never spoke before. I was just curious, would you ever be open to a conversation on your insurance? Now, when I say that on its surface, I'm going to make sales trainers roll over in their grave. And if I ever said that publicly on LinkedIn, I'm sure I'd get butchered or murdered in the comments section for not being salesy enough, or not leading with some type of problem that you solve, or the pain that's revolving around them. But here's the deal. I still think every product or service you sell is different. I think there's a lot of great scripts out there for unique software or other services. But when it's insurance, I'm telling you, I've done this for 13 years. I've tried the fancy scripts. I tried leading with the pain. I've tried all that stuff. They know what you're calling about. Ultimately, you're an insurance agent in their eyes, and you don't got to change their mind right in that first cold call. I think the first cold call for me, I just learned, is just try to spark a conversation, right? And I think you'll just actually be different by being so simple, because no one calls and just says that anymore. And Ian and I've been coaching him for almost 10 months now. He didn't use my script fully, and he still maybe has tweaked it to make it his own a little bit. But one thing he ditched is the permission-based opener, which I'm actually kind of happy he did. I used to use it as well myself, and I got away from it. If you're a fan of mine or our show, I follow Justin Michael. Go check out his book, Sales Superpowers. I don't agree with everything he says, but I think a lot of it is really good. I think some of it can really translate if you're an insurance agent. But I think importantly, he's a big I guess dissident of permission-based openers. He says it kind of makes you weak. I personally have that mindset has kind of grown on me as well. I don't think it's really necessary. I think it's just it's a way to fill a space. And so Ian realized that this week, and he told me that. He's like, man, I dropped the permission base. I heard myself on a call. I just sounded awful. Like I sounded cheesy, just kind of like, And I said, no, I think they are cheesy. And what he used to say was like, hey, you're probably going to hate me, but this is a cold call. Could I have, just 30 seconds to share why I was reaching out? And, if you use a permission-based opener, it's working well for you, fine, keep doing it. I'm just saying it's really unnecessary. Now, a lot tonality might matter in there too, but what he's gone to now is basically hey, is this blah, blah, blah. Hey, it's Ian at Christensen Group. We've never spoke before. Are you in charge of the insurance there? They say yes. And he just says, hey, I was wondering if you'd ever be open to having a conversation around that sometime, or are you perfectly happy with your agent? Stop, right? And I liked how he added that, are you perfectly happy with your agent? So my version of that is, hey, we've never spoken before. Are you in charge of the insurance? Yes. And I say kind of like, hey, well, I know you got an agent you work with. I'm not calling to quote or bid, but was just curious kind of what y'all do from a due diligence side of things, or if you'd ever be open to maybe just having a conversation. So mine's very similar to his. Sometimes I cut out the due diligence. I might just say, would you ever be open to having a conversation around due diligence, or would you ever be open to having a conversation? The whole point of all this is don't overthink it. Keep it simple. Try it before you knock it, right? So the benefits to doing this, and this is straight from Ian, he told me this, is one, he feels way more relaxed, which then makes him sound way more confident and like he's talking to peer-to-peer with people. And that's when you're calling executives and you're 30 years old and they're 50 and they ran a business, it can be intimidating. So when you just talk to them like a person, it just instills confidence in you. You're going to be more relaxed, and that's going to come across when you're calling these people. Also, he doesn't feel like he had to rush. When he did the permission-based opener, for some reason, he felt like he had to rush afterwards, right? And now that he's not necessarily doing that has gone away for him. I know some people that use permission-based openers really like them because they feel like, well, now I don't have to rush because I can say whatever I want to say. But again, my stance is I've done this for years. I've produced at a high level in the mid-market space. The whole thing is to spark a little bit of a conversation. So what Ian's has noticed is with this script that he's done is people might say like, well, what do you mean about due diligence, right? And then he'll explain, well, some people want to make sure that they're not overpaying or they don't know if they're missing something. And that's why I was calling you, right? Which we've taught on the Max Revenue channel here. The other thing is when he adds that little perfectly happy thing, he'll get, well, I'm not really perfectly happy, and that's kind of opened the door to a couple meetings as well. So I wanted to share it with you. And I think it's important. He had this breakthrough himself. I told him I didn't use permission-based openers. He knew my script way back in 10 months ago when he started. He wanted to do things a little bit his own way and put his flavor on it, which is totally fine. But he's come to the realization that ultimately it just matters to you got to be able to make the calls and you got to speak relaxed and confident and find a script that feels comfortable for you. And in insurance, it's a little unique because everyone has it. They know why you're calling. There's nothing crazy or different you're doing. I mean, I know you and your agency probably say you do all this really cool stuff and you think you're amazing. But again, remember what I talked about earlier, our ego, it's really, really big, but ultimately your clients are going to view you this way. Now, I'm not saying you got to just, fall in line to that commodity way they view you. Of course not. That's where you get the conversation going and then you differentiate yourself throughout the due diligence process. So I'm not going to go down that tangent here. Again, I appreciate you watching and subscribing to our channel. If you like our stuff, do us a favor, hit the like button, comment below, let me know what are your thoughts on cold call openers or any of the other things that we talked about today. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can see future information and tips and tricks when they come out. Good luck.